Hello, Garnet here, and I was thinking, earlier today I did a short three-part video series called The Tao of Neuroplasticity, and the idea that this really attractive new neuroscientific principle of neuroplasticity, although appreciated now more clearly as far as its functional nature, more to do with a scientific understanding, doesn't mean that neuroplastic appreciations and practices haven't existed for long periods of time. That's the reason why I talked about neuroplasticity in relation to Taoism. Qigong and Negong and even tonic herbology and so many things, I mean, most of which I didn't really go into detail. So anyway, I was thinking more about the yoga tradition, the yogic tradition, and some of the very basic underlying concepts, not so much the asanas themselves, although those are critical, but more of the view of the mind and the nature of the mind and changing the mind from the yogic point of view. Now, in the same way that I claimed Ron Teagarden as a dear brother and friend from the Taoist side, I'll do the same from the yoga side, and that's got to be Larry Payne. Larry Payne in the US and probably beyond now is really one of the founding fathers of the modern yoga movement. His Samatha organization, Samatha International, and over these past years the overwhelming success of what he calls prime of life yoga. The idea of refining the yogic system for people that are not young, hence in the prime of life, and how this totally aligns itself with the principle of neuroplasticity, that it's possible to positively change your brain and body, body is the brain, brain is the body, at any point in your life, at any age. So, just a couple of points that I think are worth reflecting on. Notice how the vocabulary changes, and maybe the mechanisms aren't elucidated in the same way. A lot of yoga is from a subjective point of view. Current science is more objective, but both are critically important. I really don't like the idea of either condemning one or the other, trashing all of the older traditional subjective systems because it's superstition, or trashing all the new scientific explorations because, it's just thinking, it doesn't really understand the reality. I think the two are like this. I think that they're best when they work together, and maybe they're not even separate. Anyway, the concept of samskaras. The samskara, I'm not sure on the pronunciation from the Sanskrit, but sa, like Sam, S-A-M, S-K-A-R-A, the samskara, or with an S, samskaras, are, I think you could say, simply put, that they are the mental activities, the mental patterns that we create all the time. And they can be good or they can be bad in the sense that they can work towards positive change or work towards negative change. And, it sounds exactly like the neuronal patterns discussed in neuroplasticity. I won't go into one of my subjects about mind and brain. I think that it's a mistake to create a dualistic approach. So let's just put that aside, at least for the moment. But the samskaras are refined in the yogic tradition. Of course, yoga is so much more than just physical exercise. Although lots of people use it as physical exercise, I think it's superb as a movement approach to neuroplastic change. In other videos I've talked about the fact that there are basically three avenues of approach to neuroplastic change. There's movement, there's mental, and there's sensory. in truth, these three really can't be separated, but we analytically separate them for the cause of creating technique. So the movement aspect, the positions are extraordinary, and yes, the different asanas, the different postures are meant to activate certain nadis for certain major and minor chakra centers and so on. So when I say the sanskaras are basically thought of as occurring in the mind field, which I think is inseparable from the brain terrain. Maybe two different ways of describing the same thing. And if these samskaras are perpetuated, if you continue to work with them, then they become, in the Sanskrit jargon of yoga, they become the vasana. V-A-S-A-N-A, or S-V-A-N-A-S, the vasana. And the samskara into the vasana is very much, to me, explaining in a slightly different perspective the principle of fire it to wire it, use it or lose it. I have a hard time finding a difference between the two, except maybe the languaging and some of how they discuss the mechanisms, but the mechanisms are just from a point of view that is maybe more philosophical. And it's also recognized, and here I don't know the Sanskrit term, I'll use just the conventional modern term, the neuroscientific term, is that when you do yoga, whether it's an asana sequence, whether you're doing pranayamas to affect the breathing, and hence the energy charge and pathways, whether you're doing a mantra recitation or whatever it is. I mean, all of these are the yoga tradition, of course, depending on how you practice it. You end up feeling good. There's a good feeling. It's a sensual, psychological, physical feel-good, and this is what's called triggering the reward system. And the reward system really is the glue that gets squirted into the neuroplastic patterns. These new neuroplastic patterns are fortified by the chemistry of the reward, and have that good feeling, the dopamine and the endorphins. Really, it's like squirting glue into the new patterns. So, when I look at the whole thing, I look at yoga and neuroplasticity, I see neuroplasticity, in this case, of course, with our instrument, the Neurolite, as being just a gorgeous dancing together, once again, of a modern concept and technology with an old, almost ancient tradition. Because they also agree that, like in the process of creating samskara, that the most important thing is the awareness, the attention, the conscious appreciation of the experience. And that's exactly what we see in neuroplastic theory, that the important first step of neuroplastic change is the experience must have your attention. And it's increased then by faith or belief in the nature of the experience. And then thirdly, it's glued together by the emotional quality of appreciation of the yes feeling, the triggering a stronger response in that reward system of dopamine and the endorphins. So I'm more and more excited every day by what I see in neuroplasticity, what I see with the Neurolite, and how it is expanding into or joining with so many systems that hold so much value, and learning how we can extend that value. So just a little sort of evening thought. I was shifting into my t-shirt and sweatpants for relaxation. I thought, geez, the more I think about having done the little thing on Taoism, I really should say a little bit about yoga and neuroplasticity. And now I have. So thanks to my brother, Larry Payne. He was very kind to host a Neurolite training in LA a few months ago at the original Samatha Yoga studio, filled with history, and I really love what he's doing. So, neuroplasticity, look at it from all points of view. Thanks. Bye-bye. Namaste.